Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous 2019. Hey, we're heading out to Columbus, Wisconsin area, and we're going to connect with Austin Bittner. You know, Austin's one of these young guns. He's 20-some years old, college student, but he's a 365-day-a-year hunter, and he's going to share some tips and techniques and tell you why hunting's the best thing in his life. Austin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bruce. Appreciate you having me, and definitely look forward to our conversation we're going to have today.
Yeah, it's going to be fun now. And folks, if you don't know where Austin goes to school, Austin, tell them where you go to school.
I'm a fourth-year mechanical engineering student at Michigan Tech. That's up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Houghton. So it's about 6 hours from home.
And folks, there's a post there, and it's a very high post. And how much was the record snowfall in the Upper Peninsula?
I think it's over 300 inches. We definitely get enough snow up there.
So, folks, think about that. 300 inches. I can't really fathom that. But anyway, that's the type of snow he gets where he goes to school, and I just thought I'd throw that in. So, Austin, we connected on Instagram, and thanks for reaching out to me because I always love to just sit and chat and talk about hunting. So let's start right off with your 2018 season, when it began and when it ended.
Yeah, so I had an excellent year this year. Shot a buck with both my gun and my bow. I guess it really starts back in the summer months when you're putting your food plots in, when you're running your trail cameras. And I do a lot of work on that like anybody else would. But I will never miss opening day of bow season. Actually, next year I will because I'll be in Colorado elk hunting. But our season opens September 15th in Wisconsin, so I'm always there for opener. This year it was pretty tough opener for the first couple of weeks, actually. We had some pretty warm weather, and the mosquitoes were just awful, so I had to be in bug nets or have a thermocell on me at all times. But kind of fought through it. It was a slower early season. We saw a bunch of does and smaller bucks, but nothing really of interest. And then I'd say around October 15th or so, we had a cold front come through, and I started to see a lot of the 3.5 starting to get on their feet. And then checking cameras, I trust my cameras a lot. I run, I think, 15 or 16 cameras between my two properties that I can hunt. And checking them, I started to see around the 15th that the nicer bucks were moving. A couple of my shooters were starting to move. Actually, back in the summer, I had probably the biggest buck I've ever had on camera running around, but he disappeared in September. So I started to switch my focus to a pair of 4.5-year-old 10-pointers that we had around, and we had an 8-pointer too. And I think it was October 21st or so, I actually saw the one Big 10 for the first time, and he was locked down with a doe, and it was awful early, but it must have been one of the first available ones. And he came out of a little block of woods. There's 2 blocks of woods on mine. There's a small block, and then there's a bigger block, and he was about the third nice buck I'd seen come out of that block of woods and not come up to the hill to me. So I kind of put that in the back of my head. I probably should start looking into where they're going after that because they're not doing what they have in the past. And that day I actually walked out of the stand after a couple hours of not seeing them, and they were laying on the edge of that block of woods, and I bumped both him and the doe. That one about broke my heart watching him run away. But after that, I kind of backed off on hunting him because I knew I bumped him once. I got to give him some time, kind of take the pressure off. And I switched to, I had a 4-year-old 8-pointer on mine that I figured he would be a good buck to shoot. And I let a friend of mine come over, Colton, and he actually, the first day out, I think it was October 24th. And I'd started seeing the bucks with the does or pushing the does. So I'm a big fan of using the bleat call in that early kind of October 20th range when they're first starting to look. So I gave a couple calls on the bleat call, and he came right in 30 yards, and my friend shot him. I think he went 50 yards, and it was the biggest buck he's ever shot, and he was pretty happy about it. So that was definitely one of the cooler things that I've gotten to see is I got to watch my best friend shoot his biggest buck. So then I went back that I had seen that big one out of, trying to get back to him. And Saturday night, I saw him again come out of the same spot. So I said, I'm usually one not to be really aggressive with things, but there's a patch of weather coming the next day, windy and rain. And I said, when that comes in, I need to get into that corner of that woods and I need to hang a stand. So I did. And then I saw him again Sunday night, come out of the same spot. I didn't want to hunt the stand that night that I just hunted. So I waited until Monday morning, pulled a few strings to get out of class on Monday morning, actually. Hopefully none of the teachers are listening. But pulled a few strings and I went in there Monday morning, and it was one of the coolest hunts I've ever had. About a half an hour after daylight, the 1.8-pointer come running down the edge of the woods with his tail tucked. And I've seen that many a times when there's a big buck around. He was a nice 8-pointer, not small buck by any means. And I knew there had to be something back there. And after about 5 minutes, I heard some crashing, and the doe came running in behind me with this 10-pointer behind her. And I actually got to watch him breed her. And after that, he stayed with the doe, and I had him at 50, but there was a branch, and it was October 29th. I didn't really feel comfortable shooting him at 50 yards. I don't like to shoot over 40. And he went with the doe, and that 8-pointer actually came back into the woods when I grunted and snort wheezed. And that big one came back and chased him around. He was put on a heck of a show. He was grunting, snort wheezing, squaring him up to fight. And I got him eventually to 40 yards, and I smoked him, and he went maybe 30 yards, and he fell over.
Wow.
So that was one of the coolest encounters I've had bow hunting, as far as just the interaction with the deer, getting to watch him breed the doe and grunt and snort wheeze. And I wish I would have got that on video.
Oh, yeah. Were you snort wheezing him back, Adam? Were you talking to him?
Yeah. When he started to walk away with the doe, I hit the grunt call, and you could tell he was agitated, but he wasn't going to leave that doe. So he took a few more steps, and I snort wheezed at him, and he snort wheezed back. And at the same time, that 8-pointer came running into the woods. And then I kind of let those two interact, and I was quiet.
Hey, folks. Bruce Hutchin, host of Whitetail Rendezvous. Hey, I'm pleased to announce that Buckwild Coffee is continuing their sponsorship for 2019. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people every day go to Starbucks and buy coffee. Well, I'll ship it to your house. Yes, I'll ship light, medium, or dark roast, ground or bean, right to your house. It's real simple. Just go to whitetailrendezvous.com/shop, pick out what roast you want, and we'll ship it out. Take a look at Buckwild Coffee, the finest roasts in the West. Well, finest roasts around the campfire, finest roasts around your kitchen table. It's just flat out the finest roast you can get today. Order some at whitetailrendezvous.com/shop.
Was more real.
So did it sound like that, or what was the snort?
Yep. Yeah, it sounded like that. The normal snort wheeze like that.
Yeah. How about the grunts? What type of grunts were they?
They were just so low. The low. Actually, I totally forgot. He did do a buck roar. At one point he did do the roar, and that's the first time that I've ever heard that.
What does that sound
beyond
like?
That, that was that long drawn out. Yeah.
It's really kind of wild, folks, if you've never heard it.
Yeah, it's one that I've heard people do on TV, but I've never heard it in person, and it was really cool to get to hear that.
Yeah, because longer you hunted, obviously you were covered up with deer, you made the right move. Now, why didn't you hunt that stand the same night? You hung it when it was windy, wild out, and you slipped in there, slipped out of there, didn't bump anything. Why didn't you hunt it that night?
The wind wasn't quite right, but that's not really a great excuse, I guess, because that time of year when I know the big thing about why I went in there and hung that stand was because that corn was going to come off any day. And when the corn comes off, it totally changes the deer's patterns at my place as it would any place. And I knew if I didn't get in there and hang that stand and hunt it, it probably wasn't going to work. And I guess I didn't go in there because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't 100% sure that I didn't bump anything or something didn't see me. And I had been seeing more deer come out of that stand in the morning. So I just said, let's leave the pressure off of it. I think he's in there with a doe that's still bedding there, and I'll just leave it and I'll go hunt it the following morning.
Yeah, the biggest thing, if you're taking notes, folks, cold front, hunt the cold fronts. 2, from a distance, he saw buck behavior. He patterned the buck. The buck was there. He was watching him. And then tell me about the blocks of land. Are they 100 acres, 500 acres, 200 acres, 40 acres?
Well, both of the places that I have permission to hunt are 200 acres. So this one here is actually right out my back door. The wood block that I shot this year out of is maybe a 10-acre block of woods, maybe not even quite that big, maybe about 8. But up the hill from it where I normally hunt is about a 40-acre wood block. And there's kind of a thick marshy strip that runs along the property too that's maybe another 5 acres of woods all total, but it's a really long, narrow strip. So I got plenty of woods, and I got a 1-acre food plot in the middle of it, and then it's all surrounded by either beans or corn, depending on the year.
And then, like a lot of places around Columbus, how much marsh do you have on it?
I have very little, actually. I call it a marsh, but it's not super wet because there's 2 creeks and a couple of ponds, but it's maybe, I would say, 20 acres or so of kind of just grassy marsh. It's not super wet, not thick. Right across the woods from in my neighbors, they have a pretty significant, maybe 40 or 60 acre marsh that's 200 yards away.
So the marshes are great security cover, great bedding areas, because they're just hard to approach a buck hanging out in the marsh.
Absolutely.
So why are you a hunter?
I guess I got to credit my dad to getting me into it. He started taking me hunting when I was 3 years old. I can't remember it, but I have pictures of me on his shoulders walking me to the deer stand. He started letting me shoot guns BB guns when I was 3, had a 410 at 4, started shooting rifles at 5 or 6. Now I have a couple 8-year-old sisters, and I can't even fathom taking 1 or 2 of them hunting with me at that young. So I definitely have to credit him getting me into it so early. He took his hunting seriously. He didn't hunt 365 like I do now. He got me into it, and then I guess it's just kind of why I love to hunt. I just love to hunt. It's kind of my happy place. As kids in high school, they had their basketball, they had their football. I played basketball for a while, but eventually hunting kind of took over. It's a new challenge every year. It's never the same thing. You always got to put a new puzzle together. And like I said before, I'm going to school to be an engineer. So it's kind of the same thing, right? You're always trying to solve a new problem or trying to figure something out to get you where you want to be. So a lot of times hunting's my getaway, my unplug, go make myself happy, go feel better. And it's just always challenging me. And I guess that's why I'm kind of addicted to hunting.
Now, you're 6 hours away. So how are you a 365 hunter? Do you have Wi-Fi in your trail cameras, or how does that work?
Well, I do a lot of my work in the summer when I'm home. I'll do the food plots and stuff. But yeah, trail cameras, I mean, I have so many trail camera pictures. I'm sorting pictures. I'm studying weather patterns that with those pictures. So I'll have a group of pictures on, say, September 26th, right? And it was a really good day on the cameras. So I'll go back and I'll see what was the pressure, what was the wind, what was the temperature, what made that deer move, and where did he move. Looking at a lot of maps, trying to figure out where they're bedding, where they're feeding, how they're getting there. Deer's just always kind of on the mind for me when I'm not doing homework at school. So just doing as much research as you can. And then something that I'm really big into too is historical pictures. So if I have pictures of the deer at 2, 3 years old, I can go back and I look at those. What was his pattern? When was he here? When was he there? What was he using? Stuff like that.
Because you can tell a lot from your trail cameras, direction they're coming and going. Deer Lab, Jonathan Livingston, he's one guy that's been on the show, and he sorts all that stuff out. And if you're not at least keeping a log, folks, with your trail cameras and just collecting to build a hit list, you're missing out on a lot of information. And because it's very sophisticated now, because they can tell you the wind direction, barometric pressure, moon, date and time is very easy. But there's so much additional information, and then you take that over a number of years and you'll see a pattern that the biggest bucks, like this temperature, this wind direction, this barometer, this moon phase. And when that happens between the dates of October 28th to November 10th, you should see them in the daylight. Once that happens, get in your stand.
Right. Yeah. My favorite time to hunt, to be honest, it used to be November 5th used to be my date. I still won't miss it for the world. But actually, my new favorite time to hunt is the first cold front after October 20th, because it's kind of that stage where nobody's been out in the woods hunting them hard yet. I'll go out early season, but I'll be really careful moving stands a lot, making sure that I'm not putting pressure on it, checking the wind, all that stuff. But I'm still going to be in the woods. I know a lot of people don't go into their woods a lot or they'll stay out of it. I'm the type that just loves to hunt. So I'm going to be hunting, but I'm going to be smart about it. I'm going to pick the right wind and I'm going to bounce around stands so that I'm not putting too much pressure on any one stand. I'll leave my sanctuaries and whatever, but that first cold front after October 20th is when they're starting to really look for those first does. And a lot of them aren't ready yet. So what you wind up with is just the bucks cruising, bouncing from doe to doe. And then that's when the bleat call and stuff like that can be really effective because they're going to come check it out, trying to be the first ones to get to those does. So that's another good time that I really like to key in on. And that first cold front's when I've shot my bucks the last 2 years now.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draws are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. All in all, if you're hunting out west in 2018, GoHunt.com Insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com.
One thing.
I like to rattle during that time. I've had some of my best rattling sessions in high deer concentration areas, and that's one thing I found about rattling. The more bucks in the area, the more action you're going to get.
Right, and I did do that this year too. I rattled occasionally, and I did have pretty good luck with it. I've never had a ton of luck with rattling in big ones. They're usually the 2- and 3-year-olds. Sometimes I'll shoot a 3-year-old. I'm not a diehard, it's got to be this or that. If it gets me excited, makes me happy, I'm going to shoot it. And that's what anybody should do, in my opinion. But the rattling, I did have better luck this year than I did, and I think you're right. That's attributed to I had more bucks around than usual, and they're all coming to see what's going on, and I think that has to do with trying to find the first available doe, because they're thinking, oh, there's 2 bucks over there fighting, there's probably a doe that they're going after. So I would agree that the rattling that time of the year is pretty effective too.
Now, what's that bleat sound like, the one that you like to use?
I use the long can, just a bleat call. It's just a normal but the long can seems to be, it's just a longer drawn out sound than a normal just blat. And that seems to be more effective.
No, what type of sequence, I guess that's the right word, sequence do you use when you're blatting?
I'll give 2 in a pretty close proximity. So I'll give 1 and then 2, and then I'll wait maybe 10, 15 seconds and I'll give a third. And that's usually what I stick with. If I'm rattling now, I'll run with it, but the bleed, I'll just usually stick with just the bleed.
Because there's lots of options. And the only thing that I can tell you, listen to this, you've got to do what works best. But Austin just gave you some good advice at bleeding, later on with grunt calls and rattling. And if you're going to rattle, have a decoy out there. Have a buck out there, buck decoy, whatever you want to use. Because when they come in, they're looking, okay, where's these guys fighting? And they hear the clashing of horns and they see one buck and they go, oh, he must have chased the other one off or whatever. And then you got to dress up the scene a little bit, because if they come in, and I've had elk do this, and you call an elk and they'll come in and they're looking, okay, where's the bull? Where's the bull? Where's the cow? Where's the cow? And if they don't see it, and they might be 100 yards away, but they know where the sound is. So if it's not there, it's like, okay, what does this mean? And I'm talking mature bull elk, not 2.5, 3.5 years old. And when you go into Colorado, you'll find that you're going to be extremely successful because you're a good whitetail deer hunter.
Yeah, I hope that carries over. A friend of mine are kind of doing a do-it-yourself on public land, the experience more than anything. But the elk on top would be nice. But
where are you going?
We look forward.
What part of the state?
We haven't totally figured it out yet. We have one preference point in. We both go to college together, so we have meetings set up at designated times to talk about this, and we're going to be deciding pretty quick. But with school's pretty tough up there, so we haven't had a ton of time to talk about it, but it's definitely going to be a priority here in the next month.
Yeah, I used to write for GoHunt, so GoHunt.com, go to there. They get the best research. I wrote majority of big game profiles in Colorado. So get in touch with me and I might be able to give you some pointers.
No, that'd be awesome.
But check out Go Hunt because they've got the best information and they get all the maps and stuff like that. Because I haven't written for them for 2 or 3 years now, but I did in the beginning. But I'm always willing to give some advice. And I have people that'll call me and they want to get, okay, tell me exactly what drainage. And then that. If you're wanting that, folks, you're going to have to pay me. I don't know how else to say it.
What fun is that if you don't get to figure out anything, right? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, what's the point? But first time I came out here, I had read Dwight Schuh's book, and he and Jones, what's Jones's first name? The cow call guy, elk call. Anyway, can't remember his name. Anyway, they were running mates. I met him at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. So I got to know Dwight, and I read his books, and I just did what he had in his book. And I missed a spike bull. But the biggest thing and I had a guest on earlier, Jeanette Hall, and I smelled them before I saw them. Hint, hint. Keep the wind in your face. And
right.
Elk smell like a barnyard. They stink. I mean, you can't miss it. It isn't like anything you've smelt before. And if you're spot and stalking or still hunting dark timber, you can get up very close to elk. You have to do it right. But you can smell them, and I smelled him, and he wasn't 20 yards away when he busted. And first time out there, I took a running shot, and I shot underneath him. He was big, and I shouldn't have taken a running shot, but I did because I knew he was there, and I was all primed. I was at full draw, so away he went, but never hit him. But the thing is, you can use your senses to your advantage, and then you can pattern elk, and just like whitetails. But to do that, you have to hunt them from a distance, and you have to hunt them where other people aren't going to pound them. That's the hard part.
Right. Anything with the pressure on them, they're going to move around. And the wind is definitely, I've heard that's probably the biggest key out there is keeping it in your favor. Otherwise, they're gone. Even with hunting deer, you can be walking through the woods sometimes, and I'll smell them before I see them. A lot of times I'll have that in the rut.
Right.
You'll be walking through the woods, you feel like you're starting to smell something, and then all of a sudden one jumps up 20, 30 yards away. So I definitely understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, because it's really fun. And you got to dance with the thermals in elk hunting, which you don't have to as much whitetails. If you're in Buffalo County or along the Mississippi or in hill country, yeah, you got thermals there. But places a lot of people hunt pretty flat.
Right. Down home here by Columbus, it is flat. But in my other piece that I can hunt where I shot my gun buck, that's up in Jackson County, which is just 2 over from Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
So that one has a lot of the hills and the ridges. And you're right, I hunt that completely different than I hunt this down home.
Let's talk about that. That's a great segue. Let's talk about that. How do you hunt it?
Yeah. So down home, it's basically the wood blocks with the funnels and the fields. So down home, I'll hunt a lot of fringes or the funnel points where I know they're coming in or out of the woods or anywhere where the wood's next down. But up in Jackson County, where there's ridges and valleys, I'll hunt a lot. I'll use the land as a funnel then instead of the field edges of the woods. Up there, it's a lot of bigger timber. Basically, that 200 is all woods as opposed to my 200 down here being about 60% field and 40% woods or so. Up there, it's all woods. So you got to focus on the land and how that'll funnel them. So my favorites is ridges. My best bow stands are on ridges where I can get above them so my wind is above them and stuff like that. So they use those like a highway, basically, to get from point A to point B from what I've seen. Or the valleys. I like to gun hunt valleys because scent isn't quite as big of a deal with my rifle. When they come into the valley, they're in trouble kind of thing. But yeah, so I definitely use just the land, the formation of the land more to my advantage there than I would down here.
Now, what about skylighting? I know a lot of guys we've got on our farm, we've got one saddle, insignificant, and the deer, I mean, if you're up in your tree stand from the bottom, when they got to climb up to the saddle, they can see you. So how do you combat that?
There's quite a few big oak trees up there. So I like to try and nestle into an oak tree that's got a wider back on it to try and prevent that. But otherwise, there, the deer, I've maybe been skylined once in my life, I think, on a buck. Obviously, you'll have a doe that comes in close every now and again. But I've only ever had one skyline me that I was going to shoot or that upset me, I guess. But And up there's a lot of trees. I just try and get into a group of trees to break up my silhouette, but there's not a ton that you can do sometimes to do it. It's just something that you got to be careful with, obviously. And just the movement in general, the less you move, the less chance they're going to silhouette you, I guess.
And it's tough, folks. When you're hunting different terrains, you got to figure out how best. And sometimes it's smart to set up a little further away from that. If it's a small saddle, set a little way or get on the other side, depending on the wind. So they come over the hill and they're eyeball to you, but then it's too late because as soon as they top the ridge, you shoot them.
Yeah, it's just it's a double-edged sword to how you hunt it. But I generally like to pay more attention to my scent than my silhouette in that situation, just to count of the scent travels a lot further than they can see me. So I'll worry about figuring it out when they're in front of me kind of thing, but generally, it's not a huge problem if you're smart about where you hang your tree stands. I guess the other thing about it is if you know the main trail's coming, the trail coming one way, set your stand up so that you're between the tree and them, so you're not off the side of the tree kind of thing. But sometimes a lot of those stands, I only hunt in the rut when I know it's really good, and they're more preoccupied usually, and just kind of hope on the fact that you get away with it.
Yeah, and great point, because there's some places I won't hunt except during a rut just because of that, because you're exposed, but their minds are on something else. And I had a great experience this year. I had a 10-point buck chasing an 8-point buck sitting on the ground, tucked into a dead tree on the ground, and they were 10 feet away. They were moving. I didn't get a shot, but it was just like, oh my goodness. And they were clueless because they hung around and they were checking the doe and chasing the doe all around me. I mean, behind me, in front of me, and they could care less. They could absolutely care less.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I even had the second biggest buck I've ever shot. I shot him off the ground just kind of on a whim when the farmer had a radish field planted out there just to put nutrients back into the soil. And I'd seen the deer out there every night. And again, it was the first cold front after the 20th. This was, I think, 2013. And I just felt like I had to be there. I didn't have a stand there, but I felt like I had to be there. So I got in on the ground, and there was a bunch of does out in the field, and this buck came out to check him, and I gave him a bleat call, and he came in right to 10 yards, and I shot him at 10 yards off the ground, and he had no idea I was there until after I shot him. So as long as you got the wind in the right spot and you got him preoccupied, you can get away with a lot more.
Hey, folks. Bruce Hutchin, host of Whitetail Rendezvous. Hey, I'm pleased to announce that Buckwild Coffee is continuing their sponsorship for 2019. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people every day go to Starbucks and buy coffee. Well, I'll ship it to your house. Yes, I'll ship light, medium, or dark roast, ground, or bean, right to your house. It's real simple. Just go to whitetailrendezvous.com/shop, pick out what roast you want, and we'll ship it out. Take a look at Buckwild Coffee, the finest roasts in the West. Well, finest roasts around the campfire, finest roasts around your kitchen table. It's just flat out the finest roasts you can get today. Order some at whitetailrendezvous.com/shop.
Sure.
So, folks, I know everybody likes to get in the air, but I've seen more and more that deer are they're drilling me, especially does. They know where the stand is, and they're just drilling it. And then I get on the ground within 50 yards of that same stand, and they walk right by me. I mean, you have to have everything right. One, you can't move, and wind's got to be in your face. Scent control, but it does work. So talking with Dan Enfeld about hunting marsh bucks, he does what he needs to do to get on those big bucks. And you think about that, and the more people you listen to and YouTube videos and such, there's no right way. And I think for a long time we said, we got to be up in the air. Well, you can be in a blind. You can be in a natural blind. You can be in a pop-up blind. You can be away from the main traffic thing and just looking for that buck that's coming through and scent checking. And we haven't even talked about that. What's been your experience hunting scent checking bucks?
Yeah, so usually the way I look at that is I don't focus on them a ton, but you'll have your main doe trails, and then a lot of those bucks will cross those doe trails perpendicular downwind and check them. I generally don't focus on them as much because unless I got the deer really patterned, I'd have to see a deer do that a couple of times for me to leave my corridors to do that. But I know a couple of friends of mine down in Iowa, they do that a lot where they're hunting those buck trails that run perpendicular to the doe trails of the bedding areas. And they have a lot of success doing it. I think the way they find those a lot of times is there'll be a rub line perpendicular to the doe trails or the bedding areas where those bucks are fouling and checking. And I guess if I was going to do that, I'd probably key in on those rub lines like that.
So it's reading sign, and then adapting. That's the biggest thing that I've learned from all my guests and from my writing, my reading, and talking with folks, because there's nothing that works all the time, but you learn enough tricks. And then, like you said, it's game on. Every year's a different game, even though it's the same 10-point buck you've been watching year and a half, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. Now he's 5.5-year deer, and you want to get him. He's number one on your hit list. But all of a sudden he changes it up. All of a sudden he disappears, not just during lockdown. I mean, he just drops off your cameras on August 25th and doesn't show back up to the 7/19th. And guess what, folks? He hasn't gone anyplace. How does that work?
Yeah, even that one I shot gun hunting this year, he was the same thing as you just described. I mean, he was gone. I have him every year in August, and then he doesn't show back up until late or not at all. And this year he showed back up opening day of gun season. I could barely believe it because I didn't have any pictures of him since August, and then all of a sudden there he was. It's crazy how they can do that, but those bigger, older deer, I mean, they don't have to move very far unless he was chasing a couple of does. That's what got him out of his area, but they don't have to move very far to get what they need in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and it's just amazing when you start journaling and start figuring things out. And that buck that you described, he wasn't a quarter mile from where you shot him. That's where he spent probably the whole fall.
Right.
Maybe a half a mile, depending on the terrain and everything. He was still there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
That's the thing that befuddles me. Said, wait a minute, I know you're here, but you know I'm here, and you just go hole up where you come out and feed and water and everything, and you know where the trail cameras are, and you know you want to stay away from all of that, or it's not good medicine. And then you shot the big buck because he's just doing what he does naturally, and that's why hunting the rut is so much fun.
Right, yeah. They make their mistakes, though.
Yeah, they do. Austin, if you looked at your whole hunting career, and now you've been doing it for a while, and what do you wish you knew 5 years ago that you know now that's made a huge difference in your hunting? The one big thing.
I could tell you 15 different things for strategy, but I think the important part is just have fun with it and do what makes you happy with it. And by that, what I mean is I was lucky enough to shoot a couple of big bucks when I was 15, 16 years old. And then you go and I want to shoot a bigger one next year. I want to shoot a bigger one. And everybody see the people on TV shooting the big buck, and I want to be like them. But that took a lot of the fun out of it. And I think it was 2016, so 2 years ago now, 2 hunting seasons ago now. And, I had a couple of bucks around that I knew I'd be more than happy to shoot and let him go just because, he's not bigger than my last one. Well, that's foolish. I've had way more fun the last 2 years. Just if the gear gets me excited and I know I'm going to be happy with it, I'm going to shoot the deer. The only reason I wait for a bigger deer in the first place is because I don't want to be done hunting. It's not because
Neither do I.
It's not right. It's not because I wouldn't be happy with another one, and I want the meat certainly, but I don't want to be done hunting. If I don't shoot one, I have an excuse to keep going back out and out and out. Sometimes Dad doesn't like that too much. He gets a little on my case about it. But no, I think just honestly having fun with it. And to be completely honest with you, I've been more successful on years where I'm having fun and I'm just doing what makes me happy with it rather than trying to do this or that because somebody else thinks this. And I think that's the most important thing that a lot of us need to look at. Because, on social media, you'll see these pages where people will be posting pictures of their deer. And the first thing they'll say is, well, it might not be a trophy. Well, you obviously thought it was a trophy, so you don't have to justify that to me or anybody else on the internet that why you want to shoot that deer. You bought your license, you put your work in, your time in, and if it made you happy, all the power to you. And I've listened to your show enough, and we all want to get together as hunters because we know that we're not a majority. In Wisconsin, we're close. There's a lot of us that hunt. But still, I just hate seeing when other people are putting other people's deer down or people feel like they have to justify it. And I just would really, that's what I would encourage, I guess, is if you want to go hunt, do what makes you happy and have fun with it.
I had to laugh when you said you don't want to kill deer because your season's over. And I was up close and personal with deer numerous times in Wisconsin. Same thing in Nebraska where I hunted this year, and I didn't want to shoot them. Plus, they didn't flip my switch on, and you know what that means. I mean, it just
right.
And I've killed one of the deer that's in my office. He's a 128, 130 class Iowa buck, just a perfect 10 point. And the biggest thing about him was his brow tines. They're as big as there's G2s and G3s. And I looked at that. He came out, Beanfield, late at night, the sun behind him. I'm going, oh, what a pretty deer. Boom. And I shot him. And the people I'm hunting with, the same hunt, the guy took him 196. And I said, it's the prettiest deer I've ever seen. He's perfect 10 point. In 2 or 3 years, he's certainly been a booner. But he came out, there he was, there I was, end of story. And it's just a gorgeous deer. And it's still the prettiest deer I've ever killed. And I've killed a couple bucks. And he's just the prettiest deer. And I have him on my wall. And I have other bucks in other parts of the house. But he's right in the thing because he's just the prettiest deer that I ever saw. And enough said.
Right, exactly. And you're proud of the deer, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So you're passionate about hunting. You want to be happy. What do you see? Let's talk about the future of hunting, because there's a lot of stuff going on now. You hit on social media. We're our own worst enemies. I shoot a doe, and somebody says, well, why'd you shoot a doe? Well, I wanted to eat her. Plus, we get too many does on the farm. You ever hear of QDMA and balance herd and yada, yada, yada. But I don't know why people do that, because I don't care if it's spike buck. If it's legal, just like you said, you got a tag and it makes you happy, shoot the sucker.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I have a lot of friends that just, when I go talk to a lot of friends that meet me for the first time, who know me through a friend, they're just, oh, you're the guy that shoots those deer, you know, they always want to talk to me about deer. And the first thing, they'll say is, well, how do I shoot big deer? Or, how do I do this? And they'll be pulling up maps and whatever. And in some cases, you just don't have that. So it's kind of, that's what I try and tell them. I'm fortunate enough to have the good land to do it and whatever, but you might not have that by yours. And I'm fortunate to have good neighbors and stuff like that. But as far as the future goes, I think a lot of that, hopefully you're always going to have that, because there's always a competitive side of people. And I'd be lying if I told you I didn't want to shoot a big buck, or people like the bragging rights, and I get it, but you got to kind of band together and just enjoy it, embrace everybody that wants to hunt, because we're kind of all a big family in a sense with it. But I think the key to making sure the future for hunting is successful is just the youth and trying to get people involved. I have twin 8-year-old sisters, and when they were younger, like I said, I started pretty young. It's tough to get them out when they're that young. But they are, now I have one that's, my one sister shows a lot of interest in hunting. She helped me cut shooting lines this year, put food plots in. So I told her, in the summer, I said, you want to go help me? I'll take you hunting, whatever. She's all excited. So I took her out. I think it was like October 15th or 16th that I took her out. And she just loved it. She got to see her first buck making a scrape, chasing does, grunting. And then she even videoed me shooting over the back of a turkey. So she wasn't so impressed with that, but she's definitely getting into it. And then just Sunday night here, there was a nubbin buck that had a pretty bad limp. I'd seen him in the field behind my house, so I went out and I shot him Sunday. And they got home right at dark, so I called and I said, if they want to come track it. And my dad, puts on the phone, do you guys want to come track it? And they both, yeah, let's go. They're all excited about it. So I let them come out and track the deer or whatever. And I think just getting them involved and getting them involved early, the earlier they get involved and exposed to it, the easier it is to pick up. So I'm pretty sure both of them will be hunters here shortly. I started teaching them how to shoot a bow and a gun this year, and I'm hopeful that next year, maybe with the gun, they can go out. Wisconsin just changed their law now so that they can go out at a younger age with a mentor. So hopefully I can get them involved. They definitely think they will, but I think that's the key as far as the future of hunting goes.
Well, Austin, I appreciate that. And with that, we're going to wrap up this segment of Whitetail Rendezvous 2019 with Austin Bittner of Columbus, Wisconsin. a 365 hunter. You'll hear more from Austin, I think, in the future with Whitetail Rendezvous, because I've sure enjoyed having you on a guest on the show.
Yeah, I really enjoy it too, Bruce. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.